This is the Amazing Truth Podcast. The Amazing Truth Podcast. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Stitcher. Like us on Facebook at The Amazing Truth Podcast. The Amazing Truth Podcast. Real issues, real talk.
All right, welcome, viewers. Again, these are adults, they're not minors, so you are allowed to see their faces. And we have no apology. I have no apology or regret for that. But good to see you guys. Good to see you guys back.
Good to see you too.
I see you're still in the meditational mode from last week.
You know, Ezra, you brought us through a whole therapeutic processing session, and
Yes.
it was heavy. We've been processing it through the whole week.
Yeah. You've been processing. Let's recap. Let's recap some things from last week. Some things from last week. Some high level takeaway, heavy hitters, things you've been thinking about.
You know, Ezra. For me, some of the old habits. I realized that some of the old habits, some of the things that I used to run to, that were negative, they still creep up in my current life. So I figure that I cemented the fact that I'm still a work in progress, and I need to work on, not covering those things, those old habits, but need to work on them so they don't creep up and cause more chaos.
Okay. All right. Aizo, what about you?
My takeaway is how damaging avoiding or not addressing the situation, conflict at hand, can be detrimental to the situation. That because I do that sometimes, and it's different when you reflect. Sometimes even in your reflection, you are not really truly reflecting. You are doing it as a standard operating procedure, or to check off the box you reflected. Did you truly reflect? Did you? Because reflection, you're supposed to look from an eye where if you're wrong, you point out yourself.
Yeah.
But if you're saying, okay, I reflected, I've looked at this, okay, I will learn from it. So,
Ezra,
Yes.
what about you? What's your takeaway?
You know what I remember from last week is that Kenan, you struggled with anger.
but he
was honest with that.
He was honest. He got better.
I remember that Aizo struggled with, running away from things. He's a marathon runner,
Yes.
He's constantly running away from things, I discovered that, sometimes when I'm yelling, for me, raising my voice really is not a way of wanting to be heard. It's because our hearts have drifted and drawn apart. So just being able to realize, like, every single thing I'm doing every moment, I'm cultivating to address my yelling problem. If I wake up and check on my wife, if I wake up and check on my people, if I wake up and I have a good time, then I'm just addressing my yelling problem. It is not issue. Today I'm not going to yell. That's not the problem. The problem is my heart, when it grows far from people, then yelling is the automatical defense mechanism that I create. So it's not an issue of yelling. It's an issue of me growing apart with people. So if you see me yelling at you, that means we need to work on our relationship. Something is drifting and drawing us apart. So a lot of meditational, a lot of thinking that needs to go, especially as men. As brothers, we don't even go for physical checkup. Now you're asking us to think.
It's 2022.
It's 2022.
Yeah.
Literally, men don't like going to the hospital.
Yeah.
So asking us to sit down, especially black men,
Yes.
and process our feelings, our emotions, and be in tune with that. It's Aizo, when is the first time you heard your father say, "I love you"?
Man, was it I think it's the time that I was about to get on the airplane.
And that's because he knew he may never see you again. It's not a natural thing, right?
So he can check it off the box.
Check it off, like I already said it, right? Kenan,
Well, it's hard to remember.
Yeah.
I think for me, I say it, and then they say it back.
I don't even remember if we've ever said it. I think we might have said it.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that we've grown up in a culture where meditating, you think yoga, you think it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
You think that silent moment, we're always busybodies. You have to have music playing in the background. You have to have news going on. You have to have somebody you're talking to on the call, to a point that you've never sat down and listened to your body telling you I'm tired and I'm sick. Sat down and listened to your mental state. then next time you're on medication because your mind has been telling you.
Yeah.
It's been telling you something is not right, and you've not listening to it because you've not been taken. So, listeners, please, self-care, man. There is no job that is worth your self-care. There is no program that is worth your self-care. There is no title that is worth your self-care. There is no human being that is worth your personal self-care. Be it your spouse, your children. You can be a good husband, wife, child if you haven't taken time. And I think especially those of you, the two of you are parents, man. If you guys don't practice that, how are you going to expect the young kids, the next generation, really? Just tell them time out as a punishment. Not a time for them to meditate and think. It's a punishment.
Yeah.
So let's normalize reflecting and the thinking. All right, we're going to build on that conversation. I'm going to start again, as usual, with our question. And it's not going to be a hard one this time.
And you start by answering it.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ezra. Go ahead.
It's not going to be a hard
We're
one.
ready for you.
Question is, what are some of the hereditary or genetic diseases or characters of or is it personalities, traits that can be handed down that you can think of?
I'll be practical and tell you.
Good job from last time.
Right?
Yes.
I don't my wife will probably laugh at this or kill me. But I'm very. I don't want to call it. It's not. I don't want to diagnose myself obsessive. I'm not gonna throw that word out there. But I'll say I'm very particular when it comes to some things. I'll give you an example. When there's sand. Some people, if you have sand in your shoe or a rock in your shoe, and you're walking, I don't know about you guys, but you probably walk with it the whole day. You wouldn't care about it, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Practically.
Yeah.
For me, it bothers me. Even if I'm in the middle of the road, I have to take it out. I have to.
You have to.
Whatever. My sock, if it's not put in right in my shoe, it bothers me.
That's OCD.
My daughter does the same thing.
Exactly.
Exactly. If the sock is not right, she'll fix it. And she'll stop you. If there's a rock, she will stop it. So and amongst other things. So I think there are those traits. And it's scary when you see it in someone So nowadays I don't even scream. I just say, it scares me. I want to speak, but I say, oh, you do it yourself first. So those are some of the things. Practically, that's what I've seen in my offspring.
Okay.
Wow. Man, I would speak about what scared me one time is when my son stood up against me. Not like to physically, but he's like, I have this thing that for me to do something, you don't force me. You explain to me logically why it's important. And I will do it with no...
So how old is your son?
Just turned 5.
Oh, well.
So, and this happens sometimes, usually, when you are at the shop. And for boys, it happens when it's time for hygiene, shower. Shower or buying cars. That's the time you would see your part or your wife's part in this child. So, it's like, you have money. I don't see why I can't get this. You have money. I like this. I should get it. That makes logic, right? And you haven't bought one in a while. And if anything, you owe me this. And that is kind of how I process things logically first. And then
emotions later on and everything else.
So we went back and forth about, you have too many of them, first of all, to begin with.
So you also countered with logic.
Yeah, he said, let's give away the ones that we have so that I can take this. And we went back and forth until I told him that, the way these things go is I decide when you get them and I take into consideration your behavior.
Yeah.
Because we are not going to be getting you toys and you are constantly breaking things and not listening.
So you saw a mini Literally, you are talking to yourself at 5 years old.
Yes.
like just handed down, right? You know, it's very interesting that we are the product of environment of our parents, and so for me, I think siblings wise, I have a sister growing up who will not get out of bed without sandals. If she just puts her feet down and they're not there, those feet will stay here.
Oh, bye.
You will have to bring them. Even if you had left the house and gone, she will be there all day. I never understood that. I mean, I didn't care. First of all, even if I have time to process, I didn't care.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten older, I cannot step down without socks and sandals in my house.
I've never seen you without socks.
Cannot.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it bothers me. So I ask myself, who in my family tree, where did these come along? You know, it may be small, but it's a particular way of saying that these are not things that are intentionally handed down. These are things that we have inherited. And listeners, please, viewers, think about something you've inherited from your family, from your parents, just think. And now, that segues us into a conversation.
I think we both. So what are some of the? I know those were good attributes, but some of the
Bad. No, not bad, but
they're not favorable.
Favorable ones.
Yeah.
Favorable ones.
Let's start with you, Ezra.
I think for me, it's the yelling.
Yeah.
The yelling runs in my family's family tree. Yeah. When I go back to my grandfather, he was a loud guy. And when I look at my uncles, they're very loud. They express themselves, and they express themselves loudly. So for me, it's just a natural. When I stand to speak, preach, or present, the mics have to be turned down. It's just, I don't know how to whisper. So the problem with that is, first of all, don't whisper and expect me to whisper back. You will be hurt. But secondly, it might come as though I'm aggressive.
Yeah.
It might come out as and then I have a choleric personality. So you combine that, it might come out in a very negative tone. People are afraid of you. They don't know how to approach you, how to, something that we've had to work through with my wife. I'm still working through that. So I think those are some of the things. That's one that I wish, and I'm praying and I'm working through. At work, I'm very calm, very stable.
Even with us here.
Even with you here, yeah. Even at home, I am, for the most part, until it's triggered. But it's a weakness that I need to work through. Maybe my wife will disagree on that, but she won't have a chance to disagree on air.
No, for me, again, I talk to my kids, is living just things lying around. And I'll confess that they've gotten it from me. My wife's closet is very neat. Mine is.
It's
right?
there.
Fellas, you can relate. Right?
No, it's not. I don't think that's. I think that's a norm.
Okay, that's okay.
That's
yeah.
normal.
But the problem is now, my kids, my daughter.
It's copyright you.
Again, it's scary when you see it in front. It's mirrored. So that's it's a work in progress. So that's one thing I'm trying to do. So I'll fix myself and then show. So yeah.
Wow.
If there's nothing, I think you're fine.
If you don't have
Negative
to shift, yeah.
Oh, it's the one that I've passed on to my son, and I hold myself 100% accountable for is unhealthy snacking. I love sugar. Anybody who knows me will tell you I can eat half a cheesecake right now in this sitting. And even though my son has been selective about it, the day I actually held off introducing sugar to that. It's his mom who gave him his first candy, because the day he discovered sugar,
That's it.
it was I have arrived. I mean, it was
Life has begun.
it was a monster that actually, when I have him, we don't bring sweets into the house. We can go eat. We'll come to your house and drink pop, but I don't buy pop. We can come to your house or we can go out to a restaurant and eat a muffin, all the muffins that we can, but we don't bring any. Because if me and him have them at home, you can't tell who's the buyer and who was bought for. It's
Oh boy.
yeah.
Oh boy.
So I realized that this is a problem, a very huge problem. And I was like, whoa, this when everybody, all my friends, they would say, oh, that's Saizo. Right? He took a whole muffin for himself instead of eating. That's Saizo. He gets that from his dad. So,
you know, it's very interesting that we share all this because these are not things that we intentionally sat down and said we're going to adopt.
I don't know.
These are not things that we intentionally sat down and said we're going to hand them over. So just going back to the conversation last week, when we don't take time to meditate and we don't take time to reflect on certain things, there are things that we're going to hand over to the next generation, to our, offsprings, to our loved ones, because, if diabetes can be handed over, cancer can be handed over, sickle cell can be handed over. We talk about all these diseases that can be handed over. It's then important at that point to know that I need to do something different so that this doesn't get handed over to the next generation. So last week we were talking about conflict resolution. So going back to that, do you think our styles of handling conflict that are unhealthy that we talked about, the anger, the cutting off, the shutting off, the raising the voice, can be handed down to the next generation, our offsprings? And if so, what implication does that have? What does that tell for us? Because we're looking at ourselves now and thinking of the future of the next generation.
I think anything that we do not address to the next generation, it doesn't even need to be a parent. There are behaviors and there are things that I picked up from my older siblings. When something is not addressed or talked about, it is mimicked. So if I see you do something and we don't talk about it, when faced in the same situation, if I'm a person looking up to you, I will do it. But here's the problem. It's that we face different types of situations. And when that thing is already instilled in me, I will use it. Because for me, growing up in a culture where men don't talk about their feelings. That is a perfect recipe for having a substance abuse problem. You deal with what you have in by yourself and you find a solution. I felt like men find solutions.
That's powerful.
So
man.
that was my solution that I found.
Kenan, why do you think we're afraid of conflict, of literally facing our giants, our all these things?
I mean, aside from the it being handed down maybe from families, you see where maybe there's families that if there's conflict, they end up just covering it up, just saying it's gonna go away, or he'll come down. It's okay, he'll go and come down. Aside from that, and blanketing it, I think we shy away from having these difficult conversations because we don't like the emotions they elicit. For me, coming to you, Ezra, and saying, okay, man, I feel like I felt betrayed. I felt expressing those emotions. It's hard for people to do that. Another thing is, for me, I wouldn't like to be discounted the second time, right? Or to be beat the second time. So I tend to not have those conversations. Pretty much, that's how we end up not having and solving things.
And just to add on to what you're saying, there's also another thing. Kenan, if me and you don't have a relationship, it's kind of hard to start solving our, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like we also don't have these conversations because a relationship, the threshold or whatever it is you want to call it, that is required for me and you to sit down and to talk and address the issue at hand, it's not there.
It's not there.
The chair of conflict resolution is not there. The table is not there. The figurative table and chair are not there.
And that's why we said last week, Ezra, that if there's no love, there's no caring, Really, the conflict, you just look at it as another. You don't have the zeal or the drive or the desire to solve it, because really, I don't care about you. I'll just see you maybe once a week at church, and that's it. Why would I sit down and solve this?
But then the problem comes when you're seeing this person every day, you're living with them in the same house. You know, they don't. How do you deal with that? Right?
That changes everything now.
So, why do you think people lie?
As you know, when you ask these questions, you need to answer them.
Throw them back to me too. Throw them back to me too. I can't ask and then start answering myself. That's when you say, okay, why don't you start with it?
We are processing.
Okay, let me start. Let me go first.
Yeah.
I read a quote that says that people lie when there's no safe space for them created. If I'm going to tell you the truth and then you're going to judge me, or if I'm going to tell you the truth and you're going to rebuke me, or you're going to tell you the truth and you're going to do that, what you reinforce over a period of time is that this is not a safe space for me to be vulnerable, even though I did something wrong.
Yeah.
So let me give an example. Me growing up, my aunt told me, if you say the truth, I will not do what? Punish you, spank you. Right. You're laughing because we all have probably had this version of the story, right?
And we fell for it.
Then one day I said the truth, and guess what happened?
Got spanked.
I got spanked. So what did that do to me, the young me? It reinforced that whether I lie or not, the result is going to be the what? The same. Now, let me just continue the path that I was and still deal with the consequences that come with it. So conflict, I think that so for me, going back to this whole conversation, is that we have created a lot of liars in our homes. We have created many liars in our relationships, because the environment of me to come and say as a husband, say, hey, my wife, I did X, Y, Z. I know you won't please you. And then she will like, I'm disappointed in you. However, what can we do to work on da-da-da-da-da? Right? Like that environment is not there. I don't create it. She doesn't create it. Then we raise kids. We don't create that environment. So we are creating a society where conflict resolution, there is no that chair. There is no that table for us to be able to have. And as a result, we have developed chronic liars. Because that safe space, that safe place is not there. So next time when you're lying, ask yourself, why am I lying? Could be that, why don't I feel safe in this situation? And then what can I do to help feel safe in this situation? Because me lying, it will get me to a deeper problem. Even though this person has created the safe space, I will have that problem to deal with in the long run.
Yeah. And I think to add to that is I think for me, I create my own perceptions. When I create my own perceptions, myself, my images, these things that I have in my head, then...
But where did those images come from?
Right?
Could be there's a trail, a history through it.
There's a history to it, yeah. So, there's some sort of trauma that if I've perceived that I saw Ezra being spanked because he did this. And in my head, I'm saying, if my perceptions are, if I do this, then I'm not gonna. So those images, those perceptions we create in our head foster that culture of lying.
Actually, let me bring Aizo here. Aizo, you said something off camera is always powerful, right? Yeah. We talked about the older generation. Yeah. We are no longer young. There's a time where we're younger generation. Nowadays, you're talking about you guys handing bad behaviors to your offspring. That. But let me say, Aizo, you said something off camera. Do you think that, especially living in this culture, our parents, who has adjusted more between the young people and the older folks?
I think I will say this again on camera. Our parents have adjusted more. Our parents have adjusted more to the change of environment, the acceptance of a new culture, and have come to meet us halfway.
And why would you say that? There are things that we couldn't do back in the days. You couldn't be like, if you put your dreadlocks.
Yes.
It was perceived a certain way. But now parents nowadays are like, now I'm not saying whether it's okay or not. I'm just saying that we have there are things that our parents have accepted that back in the days were unacceptable. You wouldn't even think of uttering them.
Yes.
You wouldn't even think of conversing them. So could it be that we as the younger generation were still stuck? And we're still stuck in that perception that was created that our parents don't want to change.
Yeah.
So we're still stuck that our parents don't want to change. But in real sense, that's not the truth. We're still stuck in that perception. We're getting off topic. Let me bring this conversation back. We're talking about conflict.
No, but it's
Okay, quickly, let's take a few minutes then to get back. Because we won't talk about, okay, how do we create that chair, that table for conflict resolution? Because we need to get to that space and place. How do we create that practically so that we can do that? All right, so we can comment on those other things.
But that's where that becomes very important. That if you come to the table or you are approaching the table and it's right there, if I'm over there, then I should also approach the table. I should also be open-minded, as much as you are going to be open-minded for that conflict resolution.
Yeah.
If our parents who had, you got to remember this. I use myself as an example. I'm 33, turning 34 in 6 months or so, right? I don't know. I'm getting old, man.
You're no longer young, right?
I don't know how much of my personality is going to change at this stage. And for me to go to, per se, another place and accept that culture, I am not moving to another culture. Because I think 2 culture changes is enough. Our parents grew up. They went through a culture change. They got together. If they're still together or not, it doesn't matter. They went through this whole life in adulthood, got a culture shock. We came along. They were dealing with our culture shock. Now they have gotten to a point where we have a seat at the table. I can say this with confidence that in this country, regardless of your age, you have a seat and an opinion on the table. They had to accept that.
And there are days where you will not even see. I mean, I was having a conversation with my fellow pastor, Pastor Simon. Shout out to you, Pastor. We were having this conversation saying, there are conversations, we go certain meetings and we sit down. We're like, our age, in the culture that our parents came from, we wouldn't even be allowed to sit there. You're like,
Not in the
what are
house.
these young people doing here? Get out, it was, so we get into this. Anyways, now, that partially comes maybe the title, the roles, and what we serve, and all those kind of things. Let's get back, Kenan.
Yeah.
How do we create the table? How do we bring the table, the chair, so that we don't have to lie because we don't feel safe in conflict resolution? Practically now, how do we create those?
I think we have to be aware of our own perceptions.
Okay.
I think we need to avoid judgment, because I think we go into conflict resolution or talking about these conflicts or those difficult conversations which arise from conflict, and we want to judge the other party. And so if we avoid that judgment, I think we're able to be impartial in how we think, and we're able to listen to the other party when they speak. One thing that I've seen over the years in conflict is I always focus on what is accurate versus what is important. And then you find that the trajectory of the conflict has changed. You even forget what you were fighting about. So I think for me, focusing on what's important and not trying to be accurate when you're dealing with conflict is important. Because I'll give you an example. If you're focusing on what is important is, what relationship do I have? If I'm here with my significant other, what's important is the relationship I have with them, not being accurate on what I said on Thursday at 11:59 at 25 seconds. So dealing with what's important versus what's accurate, that's how I think it will be a start to that making it easier to talk about these difficult conversations.
Okay.
Yeah. There's many things as well. There's a lot.
I think that's what I want us to pull, because I think let's first acknowledge that we are having a conversation of things that we have never really taken time again.
Never.
To sit down and process.
Right.
First of all, why are we afraid of conflict? So we're saying the reason why we are afraid of conflict is because that safe space is not created.
Yep.
Why is that safe space not created? It could be culture, it could be religion, you have to identify why is there no safe space. For me, there might have not been safe space because grew up in a culture where it's patriarchal, where the father, when the male, when they speak, it's done. So there was never that space created. So for me, growing up now as a man, do I want to propagate that kind of table, or do I want to come with open arms and saying, now let's sit down and talk. Let's sit down and engage and reason together.
Right, yeah.
Now. And I think that's the first place, is that when you go the Bible in Isaiah 1:18, God says, come, let us do what? Reason together. Like he who is powerful, all-knowing, all these, is inviting us who are not even worth to come to the table. Do you create space for your son? You said your logic. Your son wants to understand why do we create that space of saying, hey, I know you're young, you're foolish, you're naive, you're this. But I'm going to lower myself to your level and create that space.
Yeah. You have a seat at the table.
You have a seat at the table. How do we create? So I think for me, the first principle that I see there is, if you're in a place of power, you are the first person to create that ambience of a safe space for even conflict resolutions to start. Young people might now turn around and say, oh, our parents, then it's on the parents.
But what if I throw a curveball? What if it's in a marriage situation? There's no place of power.
There is no place of power.
Is there?
Well, when I say place of power, there could be a place of influence. There could be a place of power in that case is difficult because it denotes one is over there.
Right.
But if in a place of influence.
Yeah, I mean, there's a place of power. Who started the conflict?
Okay.
Remember, they hold the upper hand. Upper hand, quote unquote. Okay, don't
But
hold
again,
me to this.
isn't that blaming though?
No,
You started it.
Or if I feel that you wronged me,
Yeah. Right.
I would, or if I communicate to you, if your spouse communicates to you that I am mad at you or I am not pleased, I want to talk. Or even that makes them, and when that person who expresses their displeasure becomes the person who says, hey, I'm ready, can we talk? Can we have that becomes the parent.
Well,
or not the parent, but per se the one person whose vibes dictate the table and the chair.
okay. Can I suggest that every person has a role
Yeah.
in creating that safe space? Because the parent can create that space, then you come there yelling and shouting and stuff. It will be taken out. You also, how you show up, will create that space, right? So I think, ask yourself, what is my role in creating that safe space for these conflicts to be able to be resolved? So there is need for the cognizant that we need to create. Come, let's reason together. A space, a place to reason. Not in your terms, not in my terms. I think so. That's the first step.
Yeah. I think when you say not on your terms or not their terms, I think that's where we say you find a common ground.
Find a common ground.
Find a common ground. Is it? Yeah. When we fight, our kids suffer. When we fight, the church community, the church, the work, whatever.
The community of
find a common ground. What is it that brings you together? So that should motivate you to. And I'll go into the therapist side and say, when you finally go into those, is it too fast? But when you finally go into it, and you name your feelings.
Yes.
Right, Ezra, I felt like when you talked about Cristiano Ronaldo like that, I felt sad. I felt dejected, betrayed, and so name those feelings.
Okay.
So then it gives me a light into you, Ezra. If you say, when I say, El Neni is name those feelings. You know, you see those feelings I'm eliciting.
Yes.
But on a serious note, I mean, when I come to a conversation, I'm saying, Isaiah, I felt sad, angry when you say those things. I think that opens up your vulnerability.
Okay, so stating the conflict, the feeling, stating it. Make sure you state it.
Yeah.
I feel angry because you did X, Y, Z.
Right.
When you did this, it made me feel da 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 da.
Yeah.
So making sure that you're not leaving a gray area of somebody to fill in the gaps by themselves. You know, just creating that communication channel. I feel disrespected when you raise your voice, Ezra.
And usually when you do that and the other person says, oh yeah, Ezra has really opened up, then they feel the urge to do the same.
Okay. But do those conflicts usually go, oh, Ezra's opened up? Do they usually go that way?
They don't.
They don't.
But Ezra, try it though. Where I'm not. Next time you have a conflict, name your feelings and see how that changes.
So what we're saying, step number 1 is create a safe space.
A safe space. Yeah.
Safe space. Create however that will be, whatever that will look like. Create that safe space. Right. Step number 2 is when you come to the table, I think identify the cause of the conflict.
Yeah.
Identify.
And agree.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to agree.
You may not agree, but you may identify.
If you don't agree, you have to agree. Okay, when you talked about my team losing, that was the source of the conflict.
This team is really hurting you, but it's okay.
Yes, I'm trying to name my feelings.
Yes, okay, name your feelings. Let me validate them.
I don't know. You might disagree, but I think when you have to agree on what the source of the conflict was. You have to. If he has a different opinion and I have a different opinion, then you might not
be able to get to the solution. So what are we seeking to address? By the end of this conversation, this is what success will look like.
Right.
Izo, last week we talked about the rule when you don't master your emotions, when you don't take care of that thing, it takes care of you. Why do you think it's so hard just to, like now we are practicing talking about, why do you think it's always hard when it's real at that moment to actually create that safe space, to actually name feelings? What makes it so hard?
I think we struggle with communication.
Yeah.
Because even communication with self is communication. We struggle with communication, and that is, for me, the domino effect of many things.
So again, viewers and listeners, you might be a therapist, you might be doing this for a life. These are gentlemen who are struggling here, trying to find our ways to find the solution to this. So go to this video, go in the chat, just write for us some practical steps. How do you deal with it yourself? How do you deal? So that anybody who can go through this video can also learn, some of those things that have worked for you and how we can be able to get to that space. Because honestly, it's not right for us to be a bunch of human beings who are sad and sorrowful and in pain and all that, because we have not created this safe space, this safe place, on how to go around.
I want to add something about communication. I think not just the fact that generally we don't know how to communicate, we also don't know how to communicate in terms of high tension. When it's really, like I said, when it's high tension, I stutter. I cannot get a sentence out. But some people just go to cursing. Some people go to other things. So when we don't know how to communicate when it's high tension, we don't know. So,
and I think that comes back to the concept of relationship. You need to know each other so that you can know how you're dealing with that. Let me give you a practical example. My wife, when we're in this conversation, just like she can't, her words just evaporate. Right. Me, words are just coming out, right? But then what works really, really, really well for her is she goes and writes. I did not like when she writes. Because now I'm forced to read this paper. I'm frustrated reading through it. And I want to speak back and I wonder, do I write back? They speak back. But now I've known. Now and I'm not saying we're there. Now I've seen growth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Growth in the sense that, okay, I might not like it 100%, she might not like it, but what works? What works, right? So
Yeah, no, that's
all
powerful.
that.
That's
so
powerful.
getting to build a relationship, know who, as a parent, you know, this child, this works versus this child, this works. My spouse likes when I do this versus this. They want to talk about the issue right now and then.
Yeah.
But if we talk about it right now and then, I might be struggling with an anger issue that if I lose it,
Could be.
it could be worse. So knowing and understanding, though I want to discuss this issue right now, for the sake of my spouse, my partner, you know, it might trigger the anger, the emotions. How can I master my emotions right now? Wait for the right time. I think it's meditational. Again, being I don't know how we get there. I don't know how we get there. But conflict cannot be swept under the rug.
No, it cannot.
It has to be dealt with. So,
and we've had many stories where, Ezra, where we, you know, you hear someone say, because we didn't resolve this conflict, I retired to my room and I've never come out.
yep.
Right?
Yep.
Because I can't face my so-and-so, my significant other, my parents, because we can't resolve the conflict. So my depression and anxiety kicks in. And it gets worse because, so it's important for us. It's really important to resolve conflict, Ezra. It is.
There is no way out of it. We really have. Here's another reason why it's important for us. Now, listeners, viewers, we're going to work on practical steps. Maybe we're going to get an expert who's going to come walk us through this, but we just want to create this. And for our loved ones that we have wronged and we are still working on the conflicts that we have, please bear with us. We are not there yet. You know, bear with us. We're working on this. But today's Truth Minute. Today's Truth Minute, we read a text that I think it's very... I want to ask a question based on that text. You know, it was Exodus 34, verses 6. And it says that something to the extent of, let me just paraphrase the last part. Let me just pull it up here. It's Exodus 34. Listeners, you know, we try to borrow from all sources that can be beneficial for the sake of our conversation. Exodus 34, verses 6, it says this. It says that, yes. He says, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity of transgression of sin, by no means clearing guilt, and visiting. This is talking about God. God visits the iniquity up to the children and the children's children up to the third and the fourth generation. Now, remember how we started this conversation? We talked about what can be handed down. What have you passed down? If we don't address the issue of conflict, this is something that's handed down generationally. The conflict that you and your spouse, your partner might have today, your kids might carry them to their relationships and partnerships. Because we've never resolved that up here. So there's some kids who are growing up whose marriage is already being set for failure. Because the way they resolve conflicts is what they've seen at home. So then they're going to bring in somebody else who's coming, and that's what they've seen. Now you put two people who have broken view of resolving conflict together. What is happening to that relationship? Then they carry that, and it's more toxic to the third generation. So if we don't address this issue of dealing with conflict, I think that's why we are seeing the world being where it is. We're a bunch of people who have never learned how to deal with conflict. And it's just showing up. You go to this workplace, you don't get along with people, you quit, you go to the other one. You go to the other, you don't get along, you quit. You go to this church, you don't get along, you quit, you go to the other one. You go to the other one, you break it, you start another one. You go to this. Can't you at some point pause and say, maybe I'm the problem?
Maybe I'm the problem, yeah. Ezi, I mean, you're touching a nerve there, because I think we've seen a lot of... let's not even talk in the future. Currently, there's people examples where you can see cousins don't talk to each other because our fathers
who are brothers
were not talking, right? And it's trickled down.
And they don't know the source why they never talked.
They just grew up knowing. They don't talk, and that they've carried it down.
It's handed down.
Bro, that's...
So
but how do you go back to that? How do you go back up?
I think that's the question. You might not be able to go way back up. But you really have to carry conflict that you had nothing to play to do. I mean, let's talk about slavery. Blacks and white.
Yes.
There are people who believe some race is superior than the other one, but they cannot tell you why. They cannot tell you genetically. They cannot tell you intellectually. They can't tell you emotionally. They can't tell you. I mean, you put all those things together, this race is even more superior than their race. But because that's something that they was handed down, you look at the world today.
Yeah.
So we're just in a messed up world. We're just in a messed. And you're telling, get married with unresolved pain. I don't know how we resolve that. Mr. Weisman.
I'm going to use that as my excuse. I have a lot of things to resolve. No, okay. On a serious note, you were saying something. I think what we are seeing now, it is picture perfect presentation of conflict resolution that has gone south in our personal lives and professional lives in many areas.
Let me push this needle further. Let's talk about suicide.
Yes.
Can suicide be handed down?
Yes, mental illness.
It's handed down.
Right. Yes, mental illness.
Okay, we agree it's handed down. Will I be wrong if I sat down and say that to some level, and this is, please, disclaimer, this is to no one or anything, this is just us processing here. If I never learned to deal with my conflict when I'm pushed to the wall and I saw this as a solution, could that be somebody like my next generation, my kids look at that and say, they don't have to think and process it, but that becomes their way of dealing with issues when they're pushed on the wall. Because that's what they've seen, or that's what they've heard. They've never dealt with it. Or seeing abuse, women, domestic violence, right? Because that's how they've seen in their home conflict resolved, right? These things, when we see the numbers and the cases increasing, do you think that environment of non-resolved conflict is playing a role in just seeing the spike on all these things?
It is. I think knowingly or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously, you find people that resort to suicide. It's hereditary. And going back to how we see our peers, our parents, or even people who are older than us, how they dealt with that conflict. It's easy for me to, because that's what I know. That's what's familiar to me. When, for example, if there was a conflict, if I saw my dad drink, I know, as a kid, I know that's right. And I will run to that because that's what I'm familiar with versus the other thing.
And it's a double-edged sword for you, Kenan, for two reasons. Because if he was drinking before you were actually born, your blood itself is just you're prone to alcoholism, right?
Yes, you're high.
Then you look at and you see this is how actually you resolve issues. So you have two things on top of that. Then you put the social pressure that comes around with friends and age and stuff. Then so you have multiple.
So there's a lot of things going
against you.
And then it's easier for you to just go there. And it could be drinking. It could be some other things. It could be the fornication you talked about. It could be the thing of having many things. So it is handed down, not only consciously or unconsciously. You see that it's if they didn't resolve it then, it's passed down. And the thing with this generation now is it's all refined. If it's alcohol, it's different substances. If it's fornication, it's different.
There's internet there. It's literally there. The previous generation, our generation, let's go a little bit here, PG-13, or rated, whatever it is. Our generation growing up, if you went to school in primary school, if it was pornographic stuff, you will get it in a magazine. Because who had internet then, right? Then if you were the older generation, man, I don't even know how they got it. Because magazines were not even there, right? So the farther you go to generations, you find that this scarcity of it. But now we're in a generation where, you talk about even ideas of suicide. They're all over the place. You Google. You talk about ideas of fornication. It's just right there. There's commercials that are coming on your TV. All of that. You talk about. Everything is just refined, as you're saying. So we're getting even more prone and more prone and more susceptible to these tendencies that are not healthy. So we're in a very
it's getting wow.
But brothers,
we need to figure out how we're going to solve this.
Yeah, this is opening a very serious conversation that I know that in the next upcoming episodes here that we will have to talk about. I'm going to challenge the two of us, the two of you fellas, is we are going to take this and we are going to address where we are, our current state of affairs as a community, as a community across all across all the generations, our current state of affairs, because where we are right now, something has to change, or a different tune of music has to be played, whether everyone dances or not. Something new has to be tried. Long story short. Yeah, we have to give our kids different, and for someone like me, I can't even blame the parents, because they even bought us books on these things. They tried their best to model, and somewhere down the road is where I picked up my own. I picked up, so there's that aspect too of the things that we picked or carried along. So.
Gentlemen, I think the first step for us getting this healing is just being able to have a conversation. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Plenty of work that needs to be done. I think one of the things that marriage does, or relationships do, they just show you areas of growth where you need to grow. There's two options. You either put your head down or you go to work and start working on those. There is no easy way out. We've mastered the art of philosophically speaking through these things, but not really dealing with them. And there's nothing wrong with that. But actions speak louder than words. Like, we're going to get to that level in that place. So we're going to keep this conversation going. We're talking about addressing conflict resolution. How do we resolve that? How do we get there? And we are agreeing that as we wind up now, let me bring you back full circle.
Yeah.
When I asked the question, do you guys are you comfortable with conflict resolution? There was a resounding no.
Nope.
Question I'm going to close with.
Yes.
What are we going to do now? Because we agree we don't like conflict.
Yeah.
We don't like conflict.
I personally have to face that. I have to start now, as we talked about this conversation, figure out what are those things that I either learned or picked up along the way for me to continue this progress. We keep saying we are a work in progress. Sometimes I think we say that just so that to be comfortable where we are.
Yeah.
To give us ourselves okay, I'm getting very nice heat from back here. I'm very comfortable. And I think I need to come out of that to find out what is it that makes me uncomfortable. I have to work on my work in progress.
The progress has to end at one point.
And at some point, We have to.
Yeah.
You know, we have to say, hey, this here now, we can't work on this forever.
Yeah. I think let's normalize having conversations like this.
Yeah.
If you need to process things more, it is okay to seek therapy. I think that's another space. If you feel like a conversation is too heated and too hot for you to hold, find a third party. Bring someone else who can try to, steer and help navigate, that conversation. I recently was in a mitigation session somewhere, and there's a person who was there and really, really loved their idea. They came and they had a bottle of water. Every time they wanted to spew heavy stuff, they drank the water. And it worked. Like at the end of that conversation, like, man, these really... So finding, for people like Ezra, who listening is a struggle. It's so hard to address a conflict because I'm already processing what to think. I don't listen to... I hear, I don't listen. I listen to respond. So realizing that that's my weakness when I come to these, I just need to listen. Listen to the tone. Listen to the voice. Listen to the heart. Listen to the emotion. And if we listen, it will be a good place for us to start. Our assumptions, no judgment, all those. Though judgment is not a bad thing. Hey, listeners, as you can tell, we are not laughing as we normally do. We are thinking of the conflicts awaiting of us to go resolve out there after sounding eloquent.
And knowledgeable. Practically.
But we realize that it is important. It is important. It is needed. As people of faith, I think by God's grace we can do it.
Yes.
We cannot put that out and we cannot let it go without saying that there needs a higher being to help us navigate this situation. So, brethren, parting shots as we close.
Again, I'll start and then I will go. I think a couple of things. I think I've learned now that when I go into a conflict resolutions, I'm not going to script the process. I just have to know what I'm bringing into, name my feelings, and know that I'm a work in progress. But one thing that I've learned is that, and I think I had this quote this weekend somewhere.
Where we were.
Yeah. I don't know if I had it somewhere. It says that trauma is not your fault, but healing is your responsibility.
That's powerful.
So it wasn't your fault. Someone did whatever they did to you that brought you to that conflict, but healing and recovery is your responsibility. You have to do the work for that.
We have to work to pay bills. We have to work to heal. Anyways,
Yeah.
Aizo, close this for us.
How do I follow up that? How do I follow up that? I honestly, I agree with what you just said, and for me, I'm not old yet. I refuse Ezra. I'm gonna challenge, our listeners, and viewers, especially the younger ones, for us to go. First of all, identify what are the conflicts we have. What are the conflicts we have? What are the uncomfortable places that we don't like to go? In and out, and start from close, so that we can practice good conflict resolution techniques.
Awesome. Listeners, there you have it. Let me close by saying this. The greatest investment that you can leave to your child, to your spouse, to your friend, to your loved one is not so much the wealth and the life insurance, it's a peace of mind. And if there's anything you can do that you can leave them peace of mind, I think it's worth to try everything and anything. As painful as it may be, don't put your head down, don't run away. Together in this, let's address conflict in a meaningful way. That has been our time here at Amazing Truth. We had to sit comfortably in these chairs today because this is an uncharted territories for us. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Till next time, that has been our time here at Amazing Truth Ministries. Peace out.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Amazing Truth Podcast. We hope you were blessed as you listened. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. God bless you, and see you on the next one.